Okay, so episode 2 is going to be another interview about trespassing. And in this interview, we're actually talking to my mom. I'm keeping it in the family. The reason I'm doing this right now, this focus on trespassing, is just because I feel like for some reason my parents were just the people that happened to talk the most about what they loved about the OddFellow's Tract. You know, in the film, I ended up focusing a lot on things like environmental damages that would result from the quarry in terms of how it would affect recreational users, but I didn't go too much into detail, kind of a blind spot of mine about, you know, what about the people that already use the area or have used Oddfellows? What about all the people that are no longer going to this area now that RDU Airport Authority and Wake Stone have teamed up to say trespassers? I kind of wanted to debunk their whole notion of trespasser because it is complete bunk. It's something that they've only recently rolled out as a big issue. And so anyway, I could soapbox for way too long, so I'm going to let my mom take it from here. So in this interview, you're going to hear her talking about the land, her love of the land, things she appreciates about it, and then we kind of get we wax a little poetic and philosophical there at the end about what does trespasser mean when you're comparing destruction of land, being legal trespass, and people loving the forest and trying to get access to a forest, and they're being called trespassers. So here comes my mom.
Let me get my phone.
All right, don't be loud, Dad.
You don't want this to ring there.
Okay, let me quick. So we're going to interview another trespasser, Phyllis Morris. So please state your name for the record.
Phyllis Morris.
And what turned you into a trespasser of the OddFellow's Tract? How did it start? How did your life of crime begin?
Well, we lived near there. And we used to bike down the road that went right by the creek.
Old Reedy Creek Road.
Exactly, Old Reedy Creek Road. And it always looked really interesting. And since I never had the capacity to bike that section, we started to walk that section instead. And it was probably one of the funnest walking trails around. You had the creek, and the creek changed from sort of one end to the other, so you got to see, you know, where it was rapid, where it was maybe forming pools, things like that. And in the spring, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's got the wild azaleas and the rhododendron, and you feel like you are in another place in time. It's so different. And of course, it's really rugged. But that's part of its charm, because you go up and down again. You get kind of used to that. And then you have all those neat trails that people had formed or placed along the rim of the creek.
Right.
And they were beautiful. They were just beautiful. And at first we used to have to, there are places in the trail where it just went away. And so you had to find where it started again.
Oh, because of the erosion.
Yes, the erosion. Yeah. So then we'd have to
from the creek.
Yeah. And then we'd have to trek in just a little bit. I mean, not a lot.
Yeah.
You know, jump over a lot of trees for a while.
Yeah.
The trees that were laying on the ground.
Right.
And so it was always interesting, and it was always changing, and there wasn't anything quite that rugged around. And you could walk. There are places you can walk down to the creek. And you can walk out on the rocks. I never went in the water much, but I always actually wanted to. But it wasn't always summer when I was doing that.
Yeah. Did you ever see other people walking there?
Oh, yeah. We saw people.
Let me rephrase that question. Did you ever see any other trespassers?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
It was not crowded, but it was not infrequent.
Right, right.
And hikers and bikers. And as I remember, the understanding always was, since that land was not at that time being used, that hikers especially were not going to be hurting anything.
Right.
You know, that it was there, and to not walk on it would have been a shame, because from walks like that, you develop the capacity to feel empathy for that kind of land and for that kind of experience. And I think that is an extremely important motivation, psychologically, spiritually, and in matters of civics. You're being in a community.
Damn, Mom, that's pretty good stuff. Is there anything else you want to say?
Yes.
Okay.
And
I was not expecting you to say
well,
yes.
you know, one of the things that I remember is walking with our son and his family, especially the children when they were young, and they seemed to always love it. And it freaked me out that they all were barefoot, but that was what they wanted to do, so I went along with it. I still don't know how they managed that, because I sure wouldn't. There's a lot of sharp rocks through there.
Yes.
But that's one of the funner things I remember. Of course, we have many photos of them doing that.
Yeah.
And so it brings families together as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember going on a walk there, and Dad actually wasn't on his bike, and we were all walking, and Dad did his disappearing act where he was just like, a third of a mile ahead of
He always takes off.
Yeah.
And does his own cross-country experience. He also
Right.
does that in cars.
Yeah.
He stays on roads mostly, but yeah, he has a tendency to do that. It's
Yeah.
like either he just gets lost.
He just meets
I
you
think
back at the car at
yeah.
some random time.
Yeah. Well, you know, when you're interested in hiking and even in biking too, there certainly is a state of reverie that you enter. You know, where you don't think about your problems, where you don't think about anything, but your senses are just filled with everything that's happening.
Yep.
One of the things recently that has come into the conversation is the whole nomenclature of trespasser. In England, this would not happen. In England, you can go anywhere. And the same with most of Europe. You can walk through people's fields. In Scotland, you can walk through any field and you follow a path. There's a path always there, and you can follow it. But it seems as if lately the style of ownership of property has become very difficult for those of us who would like to have a little more open sense about the land that is adjacent to us. And when we walk any piece of land, whether it's open to us totally, or whether we know that it is in general use, which that piece of property at OddFellows was. It was known for a very, very long time. And I know with us, and I'm sure with others, I never saw any destruction along those trails. You know, we're careful not to step on ferns, you know, not to step on other flowers that were coming up. And we tried to be mindful of what that forest was all about and not abuse it, and not walk in trails, for instance, that maybe were overused during a wet season. Well, you don't walk through that either. So I think a lot of, I would say most people who are out on those trails, since they love them, we're cognizant of what should be done to keep it healthy.
The thing I think is so ironic is they're using the word trespasser as a way to say, like, they shouldn't be able to use the property. They're trespassers. Who are they to tell us how we can use the land? We don't want the trespassers walking on it. Instead, we want to sell it to a mining company that's going to completely obliterate the entire
Yes.
thing.
And
they don't call that trespassing.
No.
That's the crazy part.
Trespassers are friends and neighbors and community people who want to keep everything healthy. That's who this kind of trespassers are. So it shouldn't be quite the same meaning.
Yeah. I definitely think they're using that word on purpose because of the stigma attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
They should just call us trail users.
That's right.
Yeah. Unless they were willing to be there with a big fence and the knowledge that you will get arrested if you cross this fence, that's trespassing.
We've lived here for 30 years.
Yeah.
And this is the very first time when that has been brought into the conversation.
Yeah, that you're definitely a trespasser.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's the first time they put up video cameras, all that kind of stuff. But now they've set up video cameras at the trail entrances to track everyone who goes in and out. And I think they'll be surprised to find out how many little old ladies with poodles are walking in that trail